Welcome, everyone, to Odds and Ends, Life, Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts. I am Andrew Joseph Kozlowski, and with me is my good friend, our world-class musician and music producer, my co-host, Mr. Cool himself, Mr. Clyde, Columbia University, Bullard.
Yeah,
How are you doing there, Mr. Bullard?
I'm wonderful, man. I'm wonder-filled, and I'm ready to do this. I've been waiting to do this with Dr. Tomaino for a long time. I met her many years ago, and she was very kind to me in bringing me into the world of music therapy. So today we're going to get a chance to talk to her directly and get more information on what music therapy is, what it does, and what it can do, and what it proposes for the future.
Yeah, I'm very, very much into this topic, that's for sure. Dr. Concetta Tomaino is a pioneer in the field of musical therapy.
Absolutely.
She presently is the executive director and president of musical therapy at Center Like Health System. That's formerly the Beth Abraham Family of Health Services. She's internationally known for her research in the clinical applications of music and neurological rehabilitation. Her work has been featured on national programs including 48 Hours and 60 Minutes and internationally on BBC. So we're in for quite a treat tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a little something to introduce you to our guest, Dr. Concetta Tomaino.
I think music is essentially emotional, and one sees very clearly with people who have amnesia that the stronger the emotional stimulus, the better the memory. In a sense, I think this is magical. You see frozen people who can suddenly move and dance. You see amnesic people who can suddenly remember and sort of come to emotionally.
You know, it's one thing to sing a song, it's another thing to ask somebody to help you get dressed in the morning. You know, the going from singing the song to actually articulating words that make sense in everyday life. That's the ultimate goal.
Founded in 1995, the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function advances music-brain research and therapy to improve emotional and physical health. This unique therapy, based on 35 years of clinical studies on music's effect on the human condition, is guided by therapist Dr. Connie Tomaino, with research advice from the distinguished neurologist and celebrated author, Dr. Oliver Sacks. As a program of the Beth Abraham Family of Health Services, the Institute's mission is to better understand music's interaction with the brain.
Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest, Dr. Concetta Tomaino. Welcome, Doctor. Welcome to the program, Odds and Ends, Life, Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming on
with us.
We've never had a doctor on our show before, so we're going to call you Dr. Tomaino. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Now, I wanted to say briefly, I met you when you were at Beth Abrams. My aunt was in that hospital. And I went there and I saw a magazine that talked about music therapy, and I read it and I wanted to meet you. And somehow I met you and you took me into the laboratory where you were doing music therapy there. And I was intrigued. And then I later learned that there was a story that Dr. Oliver Sacks wrote for a movie called Awakenings, which starred Robert De Niro and the late Robin Williams, in which he was playing Dr. Malcolm Sayer.
Right.
And I was like, wow, you were actually working with one of the leading protagonists of music therapy in the world.
Right.
And he named his book, Musicophilia, after you. He dedicated it to you.
Right.
So that shows how deep he felt about you. And I'm quite sure how deep you felt about him.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to start out with the question, what is music therapy exactly, so listeners can understand what it is?
Sure, that's a great question, Clyde, because music therapy is the clinical and evidence-based use of music interventions to accomplish individualized goals. And it's most often done in an individual session, one-to-one. It's always done by a credentialed music therapist. So here I'm talking about a highly trained person who's board certified in music therapy, who's received an academic and clinical supervision to attain that credential. And it's a board certified credential.
Does
So
one have to be a psychiatrist in order to do this? Or
no,
what?
so the interesting thing is that music therapy, the training is at the academic level. It could be an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree or both. And the curriculum is approved by the American Music Therapy Association. So there's about 80 plus universities throughout the United States that offer an accredited degree in music therapy. Music therapist undertakes studies in science, anatomy, physiology, on the graduate level, in-depth work in music and psychotherapy to understand all the nuances of human behavior and interpersonal interactions. And then there could be advanced training in work like my work in neurologic music therapy, people with neurologic diseases, but also people who specialize in end-of-life care, in cancer care, in early childhood development, in traumatic brain injury. I also work with veterans with PTSD and how music can help them deal with some of the trauma and things like that. So, music therapy is quite broad in its scope of potential applications.
Okay.
Doctor, could you cite an example without using specifics, obviously, but I want the audience to really understand how music plays a part in this and the kind of cases that you're able to try to treat with this therapy.
Sure. Well, one of the most obvious ones and current ones that I think your listeners would be familiar with is Congresswoman Gabriella Giffords. When she was injured from a gunshot injury,
I remember that, yes.
She completely lost her ability to speak. Mm-hmm. She couldn't make a sound. She couldn't form words. And she was working with a very well-known speech therapist, speech language pathologist, but she was also working with a music therapist. Mm-hmm. And in singing words, she was able to sing a word, but she couldn't speak the word. And in singing the words, and it was to a popular song, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, she was able to get a sequence of words out in the lyrics. And that was her first stepping stone to recovering speech.
Isn't that amazing?
And then the other ones, people who have, I'm thinking of a person with Parkinson's disease that I work a lot with. And that was, pretty well illustrated in the film Awakenings, where people with Parkinson's can't initiate movement. And yet you play a steady rhythm or play a dance song, and they literally get out of their chair and can walk across the room without a problem, without hesitating.
This is one of the most beautiful arias ever written. Watch them closely for any reactions.
See, it's not just any music. It has to be the music that's right for them. It's like they only move by music that moves them. I haven't found anything that moved Bert yet.
They'll sit there like that all day if I let them. I have to play the first card.
Amazing.
Back then, when Dr. Sachs and I were working with the patients in Awakenings, we knew that rhythm and music and dance was effective to allow these people to move. Back then, there wasn't enough science or understanding of the human brain to help us understand the intersection of auditory processing of music and things like movement. And now we know, fast forward 35, almost 40 years that we work together. Now we know that there's actually shared networks for both of those things. Listening to music, the rhythm excites parts of the brain involved in movement. And that part of the brain gets excited enough so that somebody could walk across the room.
Clyde,
So without the music, that person cannot walk.
That's right.
Clyde, do you remember we were involved in a program with autism? And doctor, I don't know if this fits into the same category, but they were able to prove many years ago that we could keep the attention of a young child that had autism by using music. And I don't know if this therapy, or if it is a therapy that's been advanced now, and that falls under your uses for musical therapy.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because the field of one of the reasons why music therapy as a field, a profession, became into prominence was because of the work of people like Clive Robbins and Paul Nordoff, and they created a method of music therapy that uses improvisation that's called Nordoff Robbins music therapy. They have a program. Both of them have passed away, a while back, but the program is strong throughout the world. And Nordoff and Robbins showed that through this creative music making, children with all types of developmental delays, including those along the spectrum of autism, were able to socially interact. They were able to do multitask actions. They developed the ability to make sounds and speak in ways that they couldn't before music. There's, of course, other agencies, too, that specialize in music therapy for children with autism. And when you talk about attention, one of the reasons why music works so well is because it literally captures activity. If captures is a good word. It takes the whole brain to be excited at the same time for us to really respond to and comprehend a formal piece of music. Because music has a certain pattern and rhythm, it excites first the frontal cortex. And the frontal cortex is it's the front part of the top part of the brain, is involved in attention. And because music has this sort of novel way of changing sounds, and you can't listen to one tone, you have to listen to a sequence of tones in order to understand the melody. And if you didn't have a frontal lobe, you wouldn't be able to hear a melody because you wouldn't have enough short-term memory to sequence those tones. So inherent in the music itself is this forced attention, right? And as long as the music is different and engaging and of interest, a person will attend to it longer than they would an image or something else.
Now, is there any one specific type of music that has been found to be more effective than others? I mean, with jazz or rock and roll, classical, does it matter?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about it is there's certain things that can be standardized, like rhythm can automatically help us synchronize movement because of the way it generates sort of patterns of response and understanding of time and action. But melody and harmonies are things that are learned. So from an infant upon their first experience with the world around them is going to be exposed to different sounds and will either gravitate toward those sounds and find them interesting and get enjoyment out of them, or they may find some sounds strange and repel from those. So you can imagine, somebody who's only heard classical music their whole life may not respond as much to jazz or even, improvisations because it wouldn't make sense, but yet there would be something inherently attractive that they would still find interesting and maybe want to learn about that.
Doctor, does it ever go the other direction where somebody might hear something and it upsets them?
Oh, absolutely. Think, music, we don't learn music in isolation of everything. The music that we gravitate to, the songs that we listen to over and over again, tend to have a personal connection to us. And that could be a connection to a person, it could be a place, it could be a time in one's life, it could be a song your grandmother sang to you, a lullaby your mother sang to you. And because that integrates with our emotions so deeply, it's hard to erase that. So imagine, having the love of your life leave you, and all of a sudden that song that was yours now only brings back hurtful memories of a lost love, or a parent that passes away. And that song comes up and you think of the tragedy of the death, and or if you did, or if you had trauma, you say you were, I know I work with veterans, and there's certain types of songs that bring up very painful memories of the war, or sounds, sudden blast or heavy rhythmic sounds that may evoke an attack of some type. So all of these sounds, as we learn, as we get exposed to sounds and music, they get encoded, and these subconscious memories that come to the fore when we have an experience that makes us automatically respond to them. So you may hear a piece of music and all of a sudden feel the chills if it's a very positive song, or you may hear a piece of music and want to run away because it just, something about that song doesn't feel right. And that could be a childhood experience that was very negative.
Now, could someone who has Alzheimer's or something, if they wore headphones and walked around with a Walkman on playing music at all times, would that enable someone to walk who previously couldn't walk simply by keeping headphones on at all times?
Right. So there's a couple of things. Let me answer that. There's work that I've done a lot of research on music and memory. And in fact, there's a foundation called Music and Memory that does use and trains organizations to use personalized music, because songs of personal importance can keep somebody with Alzheimer's disease and dementia, keep them connected to the world around them and help them remember key events in their life so they don't lose that sense of self and that sense of connection and personality. Using headphones and music to stimulate gait is something that's very beneficial. And people with Parkinson's and people with different kinds of movement issues and challenges do find that listening to music does help them walk better and keeps their balance a lot better. Now, music, like any sound, if you listen to it 24/7, your brain is going to acclimate to it, and it's just going to become, it may even ignore it. So it's like the sounds in your environment. There's certain humming sounds and things that our brain doesn't pay attention to because it would be
so it's used as a trigger then.
Right. So in clinical music therapy, music is used in a very targeted way to elicit a response. And there's an assessment that's done where the music therapist will see what music works for this particular condition or this particular person, and then help them use that music consistently so they can improve, if that's possible, or at least maintain their function for as long as possible.
And it's a delicate balance that you can't go too far, in other words, with the music, because you're worried that they would become acclimated to it and then there wouldn't be a response.
Right. And so in clinical sessions, we'll actually, change up the rhythm or make it faster, add a beat someplace to accentuate the movement. So much of the field of music therapy is also in the field of psychotherapy. And in that case, there's this, if any of your guests who are going to be watching this have been to a psychotherapist, they know sometimes they can't find the word to really say what they're feeling. And one of the benefits of clinical music therapy is the music therapist can help you express yourself through an improvisation. Even if you don't play music, there's ways of using different kinds of acoustic instruments that allow you to play a very beautiful sound, or maybe play drums or something that allows you to emote feelings that you really can't get deep enough with the words. And then the music therapist will guide you through this self-exploration. So then you start to put together the feelings with events, and maybe something that's holding you back, or something that you're afraid of. And those all come to the surface. And then you process it with the music therapist to allow you to, get over whatever that is.
Is there anything in the science
sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Is there anything in the science that shows that it will also help with the healing physically of?
Oh, sure. Well, that's the exciting thing. You probably know that Dr. Sachs and I helped found the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function.
Yes.
We're celebrating our 25th anniversary, and
that
so
we didn't know.
So 25 years.
Wow.
The science wasn't there, and the Institute was founded. So clinical music therapists and neuroscientists who were just starting to ask these questions could get together and say, so what should we study? What's happening? And help us understand what happens in the brain when somebody is engaged in this intervention that actually helps them get their function back. So in the past, 20 years, 15, 20 years, the whole idea of neuroplasticity has really come to greater understanding in the medical and scientific community. It means that the brain changes throughout our life. Even though we have so many brain cells, those brain cells continue to, develop networks and connections to other networks in the brain. So when you learn something for the first time and you achieve that knowledge, there's a new circuit that's been developed.
Synapses that are frequently used have strong connections, while the rarely used synapses are eliminated.
Imagine that you've lost function. Say you can't speak because of a stroke or traumatic brain injury. And through music, through these shared pathways of speech and singing, there's still pathways that are functional, hopefully. And through those shared pathways, over time, through using a sing-song type of technique, your brain starts to develop a new network, or a more enriched network, that draws upon whatever speech areas are functioning well, and then uses the dominant singing networks to allow you to achieve speech.
That's fascinating.
But it's because the brain can change, and because music uses so many of the structures from the brainstem up to the cortex, that we're able to excite prominent areas responsible for speech, communication, interpersonal behaviors, understanding something called executive function that is so important for children and development. How do you plan something complex? How do you think ahead rather than just thinking in the moment? All of those things get enhanced through music, and now we know through even music education. Is
it language dependent? I mean, if someone from Vietnam comes to America and they don't speak English, can the therapy still work on someone who's...
Sure. Well, any of the Asian languages, or any of the languages that are heavy in sound, where sound is really important to the nuance of what the word means, they actually have better enriched networks speech. So, any music therapy that's done is going to be sensitive to the culture and the development, because we're talking about human development and brain development in an individual. We're not globally making assumptions about people in general. So each person has their unique response.